What's up, guys? Let's face it, selecting hooks can be completely overwhelming. There's so many different sizes and makes and types and styles that sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming on trying to select the right hook size for the application that you're trying to do. There's a lot of them out there, but I'm going to kind of go through some of the basics, especially on soft plastics, to kind of tell you how my mind works around selecting the right hook size for what I'm doing. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right way. It's the way that I do it. You know, some people like to use different style of hooks that are different applications for what I'm using them for, but maybe this will help you guys at least think about it a little bit before you select the right hook size. I'm going to go through a couple of different ones today. You know, one is, of course, your round bend, your round bend hook for by Gamakatsu. Of course, another one would be your straight shank, which is the super heavy cover flipping hook. Another can be an EWG style, and then also your longer extended shank hooks. I'm going to kind of go through these and kind of tell you how I look at it and how I select them. First off is like a creature style bait. You know, this right here is a Missile Baits D-Bomb. You know, what I like to throw this on a 3/0, just a round bend offset shank hook. And the reason I do that is because, one, you notice there's a collar on the hook. This holds your soft plastic in place. And the other one is I like a 3/0 on this one in particular because I can get enough of the meat inside of the bait in order to hold it. You know, I think a 4/0 is a little bit big, and you're way back on the, close to the appendages, and I think it affects some of the action of the lure. And also, you're gonna go through a lot more lures that way. And one of the main reasons that I go with this style of hook is because of the hook point exposure. I have a lot of exposure here. That way, when I do set the hook's pointing out, rather than an EWG doesn't have quite the exposure. So I like to go with that when it's creature style baits. The next one would be your Cinco Style. This right here is a Missile Baits 48. I like to go with a little bit bigger hook on there because it is a long, extended straight tail worm. Use the same style, but this is a 4/0 offset round bend hook by Gamakatsu. That way I still have enough of the meat to get into the hook of the bait. I still have, again, the exposed hook point. It's gonna give me a better hookup ratio when I'm using that style on a straight tail worm, Missile Baits 48, or your Cinco styles. I typically like to go with the Cinco style baits, the bigger hook that I can get away with. A 5 is a little too big. It's gonna put it a little too far back on the worm. I like a 4 anyway. It sets up really nice for me there. The other would be your straight shank hook. Your straight shank hook doesn't have a collar on it, but it does have a bait keep up on it. But this is maximizing your hook point exposure. It has a lot of hook point exposure here. I use this for a lot of heavy flipping, punching, heavy cover, and stuff like that. Just be careful. Some guys do like an EWG when they're punching. I do not, just simply because I like to snell my hooks on this, because when you snell, whenever you set the hook, it pops the hook point up and gives it exposure. You got to be careful with an EWG. If it pops it up, you're actually popping it up to where the round bend of the hook is actually what you're popping up. So make sure you have a lot of hook point exposure there. And then the last one would be the extended, or one of the last ones would be the extended, the long shank hook. These are for your big worms. I have this one on just a burner worm. It's a swimming worm. Made by Gambler, and you want this. It has the extended collar on it. That way you can run that worm way up high. Now this is a 6/0 too. It's an extremely long worm, and this is also, these style of worms, it's really meant for keeping that lure and that worm straight the whole time, so it won't roll on you, twist up your line. It's very important to make sure when you hook a big worm like this on a style hook like this, that you do it perfectly straight, or that way you can get the action and it won't roll on you. And then the last one would be the EWG style hooks. I like to throw the EWG style hooks really on baits that are weightless, like weightless fluke style bait or a Carolina rig, and that's more about where the position is of the fish when he hits it. Typically, fish are going to eat, like a weightless fluke higher up in the water column, and when a fish hits it and I set the hook, he's more of straight in front of me. He has the ability to get the whole bait in his mouth, and I feel like You get more action out of this bait, the hookup ratio is good, and the fish really has the ability to put this whole thing in his mouth. And when that happens, that EWG style is really hard to beat. And then a Carolina rig as well. Again, it's more of the position of the fish when I'm setting the hook on it. Weightless, he has the ability to get the whole bait in his mouth. And of course, the advantages of the EWG is when you do get a good hook in them, it's really hard for those fish to shake it. But sometimes, if I'm flipping with an EWG style, you're going to find yourself, or I find myself sometimes really skin hooking those fish, and I feel like my hookup ratio goes down a little bit. But hey, we all have opinions. This is kind of how I look at hook selections for soft plastics, and kind of what my mind goes through when I'm trying to select that right hook. So I hope this helps, guys. I mean, if you're throwing a different style of hook for a certain setup that's different than mine and it works for you, hey, don't fix it. If it's not broke, don't fix it. But Gamakatsu has every style of hook that you need. I can't emphasize enough, keep it simple. These are 4 styles of hooks that you'll probably need to stick to when you're throwing your soft plastics. And if you're having a hookup ratio problem, or you're having trouble keeping your plastics on hooks, then maybe you need to think about maybe changing to a different style of hook. But that's kind of the way that I look at it. Gamakatsu has got everything that you need to set up. If you have any questions about this video, anything that you see here, please write it in the comments, send me a message, and I'll be glad to answer anything that I can. But guys, hope this helps. Be simple, be smart, be methodical, and think about your hook selection before you just grab any hook off the shelf. All right, so tight lines, guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.